The pediatric ICU at St. Augustine's Hospital had its own heartbeat, a rhythm of ventilators, IV drips, and the soft padding of nurses' shoes against linoleum. I'd learned to read that rhythm after 3 years, working the night shift. Could tell when something was wrong just by the way the air shifted. Tonight, the air was electric. I pressed my stethoscope against little Maya Chen's chest, listening to her steady breathing while trying to ignore the man standing in the doorway. He'd been there for 20 minutes, silent as shadow, watching me work. Not Maya's father, I'd met him during afternoon rounds. This man was something else entirely. Her fever's breaking, I said without turning around, keeping my voice professional despite the way my skin prickled. That's good news. Nothing. Just that weighted silence that made the fluorescent lights feel too bright, too exposing. I adjusted Maya's blanket and finally forced myself to face him. The corridor's half-light carved his face into sharp angles. Mediterranean features, maybe Italian, with eyes so dark they seemed to swallow light. Expensive suit, no tie, the kind of controlled stillness that made predators before they struck. "Are you family?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew the answer was complicated. In a way. His voice was low, accented just enough to add danger to ordinary words. "The boy in room 314. He's mine. Room 314. The child who'd been admitted 2 hours ago with a raging fever and no clear diagnosis. The one whose admission papers had been strangely sparse. Whose father had arrived with 2 men who looked like they belonged in an action movie rather than a children's ward. Doctor, Morrison is handling his case," I said carefully. "I can page. He's asking for someone." He shifted slightly, and I caught a glimpse of something dark under his jacket. My breath caught. "Keep saying the lady with the bird. The nurses don't know what he means." My hand went instinctively to the small cardinal pin on my scrubs, a gift from my grandmother. Something I wore for the kids who needed distraction during procedures. "He must have seen me earlier when I was checking supplies," I said. "How old is he?" 6. The same age as Maya. The same age as so many of the children I'd held through long, frightening nights. Professional distance, I reminded myself. Keep professional distance. But something flickered across his face, a crack in that marble composure that looked painfully human. His mother died 3 months ago. He doesn't adjust well to strangers. Before I could respond, my pager buzzed. "Room 314. Urgent." I moved without thinking, my body responding to years of training. He followed, those expensive shoes somehow silent on the hospital floor. The hallway stretched between us and his son's room, each fluorescent panel creating pools of harsh light that we passed through like crossing between worlds. "Doctor," Morrison met us at the door, his usually steady hands trembling slightly. "Temperature's at 104.5 and climbing. We need to get it down, but he won't let anyone near him. His eyes darted to the man behind me. "He's asking for the bird lady." I pushed past Morrison, and my breath caught. The boy was beautiful in that ethereal way. Sick children sometimes wore dark hair plastered to his forehead, cheeks flushed with fever, eyes the same consuming darkness as his father's but filled with terror instead of control. He'd pressed himself into the corner of the bed, thin arms wrapped around his knees. "Hey, sweetheart," I said softly, approaching slowly. I unpinned the cardinal from my scrubs, held it where he could see it. "Were you looking for this?" His eyes locked onto the pin, and something in his face shifted. "Mama had birds," he whispered, "before she went to heaven." My chest tightened. I sat on the edge of his bed, maintaining distance but close enough that he could reach out if he wanted. "What kind of birds?" Yellow ones. In cages." His voice was rough, probably from crying. "They sang in the morning. Canaries," I said gently. "Those are beautiful singers. Did you help take care of them?" He nodded, uncurling slightly. Behind me, I heard his father take a sharp breath. "My name's Elena," I said, holding out the cardinal pin. "Would you like to hold this while Dr. Morrison checks you over? Sometimes having something small to focus on helps." Thin fingers reached out, closed around the pin. The moment he had it, his whole body seemed to relax a fraction. Morrison moved in carefully, and this time the boy let him. "Temperature first," Morrison murmured, and I helped position the thermometer. The boy, I still didn't know his name, kept his eyes on me the entire time, clutching that cheap pin like it was made of gold. "What's your name?" I asked while Morrison worked. "Luca." He said it so quietly I almost missed it. "That's a strong name. Italian?" He nodded, then winced as Morrison pressed the stethoscope against his chest. I caught his hand burning hot, too hot, and squeezed gently. "My dad's scary," Luca whispered suddenly, like he was sharing a secret. "But he's not bad. People think he's bad." I glanced back at the man in question. He stood perfectly still in the doorway, but something in his expression had fractured. Whatever walls he'd built, his son's fever was breaking them down brick by brick. "Sometimes scary and bad aren't the same thing," I said carefully. Morrison finished his examination, caught my eye with a look that said we need to talk. But before either of us could move, Luca's small hand tightened around mine. "Don't go," he whispered. "Please. The birds might leave if you go." I looked at Morrison, who nodded slightly, then at Luca's father, whose jaw had tightened to stone. "I'll stay for a bit," I promised. That's when I saw at the exact moment something changed in those dark eyes watching from the doorway. Recognition? Decision? Threat? "Thank you," he said. But the words felt weighted with something else entirely. Something that made the air in the room shift again, made my instincts scream warnings I couldn't quite interpret. He turned to leave, then paused. "Elena, just my name." But the way he said it made it sound like the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. Something dangerous. Something I was already too deep inside to escape. 3 hours. That's how long I held Luca's hand while his fever raged and broke, like waves against stone. His father never left the doorway, a dark sentinel who seemed to barely breathe, watching his son fight something we couldn't name. Dr. Morrison had run every test imaginable. Blood work came back strange but not conclusive. The symptoms didn't match any clear pattern. And through it all, Luca wouldn't let go of my hand or the cardinal pin. "The birds are singing," he mumbled in his delirium, and each time, I saw his father flinch. At 3 a.m., the fever finally steadied at 101. Still high, but manageable. Luca had fallen into an exhausted sleep, his small fingers slack around mine. I tried to ease my hand away, but even unconscious, he gripped tighter. "He hasn't let anyone touch him since his mother died." The voice came from directly behind me, close enough that I could smell expensive cologne mixed with something darker gunpowder. No, that was insane. I didn't turn around. Grief manifests differently in children. Sometimes I know about grief. He moved into my peripheral vision, and I saw him properly for the first time in decent light. Late 30s, maybe 40. A scar through his left eyebrow that someone had tried to fix with expensive surgery but hadn't quite succeeded. Hands that looked like they'd known violence, now gentle as they brushed Luca's damp hair back. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. "What did you expect?" Someone who would have called security the moment they saw the men in the hallway. I had noticed them, 2 men in dark suits who didn't belong in a pediatric ward, positioned at either end of the corridor like guards, like soldiers. My mind had catalogued them and filed them away under not my business, even as every instinct screamed otherwise. "Your son needed help," I said simply. "That's not why you stayed." He was right. I could have handed Luca off to another nurse once he'd calmed, could have cited shift changes, other patients, any number of valid reasons. Instead, I'd sat here for 3 hours, feeling the weight of this man's gaze, sensing the danger that rolled off him in waves, and stayed anyway. "Room 314 has cameras," he said conversationally, like he was discussing the weather. "I watched them from my phone. I saw you with the Chen girl earlier. You stayed 2 hours past your shift end because she was scared." My spine stiffened. "How do you... I know everything that happens in this hospital?" He pulled out his phone, showed me a screen split into multiple feeds. Not just room 314, the entire pediatric ward. "The Chen family works for me. Maya's uncle made some poor decisions. Enemies sometimes target children." The air left my lungs in a rush. Who are you?" "Someone who protects what's mine." He pocketed the phone. "The question is why my son chose you." "I don't understand. He hasn't spoken to anyone but me since Lucia died. Hasn't let anyone touch him. The nannies quit. The teachers keep their distance. But you..." He studied me like I was a puzzle missing pieces. "You walked in and he reached for you." Luca stirred in his sleep, mumbling something in Italian. His father responded in the same language, low and soothing, and I caught maybe every third word. Something about safety, something about mourning. "What's wrong with him?" I asked. "This isn't a normal fever." "No." He walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. "His mother was poisoned, slow acting. Took months before we realized. By then, his hands clenched. Luca was there when she died, held her hand, just like he's holding yours now. My throat tightened. You think someone... I don't think... I know. He turned back, and his eyes were flat, dangerous. Someone wants to hurt me through my son. They've already tried twice. Different methods each time. Then why isn't he in protective custody? Why bring him to a public hospital? Because the last private doctor I trusted was the one who poisoned his mother. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I looked down at Luca. At this small boy caught in a war he didn't choose, and felt something shift in my chest. I should report this, I whispered. To who? The police captain who takes my money? The FBI agent who tips me off about raids? His smile was sharp, humorless. There's no one to report to, Elena. There's just this, my son dying slowly, and you being the first person he's trusted since his mother. I'm just a nurse. No. He moved closer, close enough that I could see gold flecks in those dark eyes. You're something else. Luca knows it. I think I know it too. My pager buzzed room 308, Maya Chen, but when I tried to stand, Luca whimpered, his fever-bright eyes snapping open. Don't go, he pleaded. The bad birds will come if you go. What bad birds, sweetheart? The black ones. The ones that came for Mama. His eyes darted to his father, then back to me. They whisper secrets. They know things. His father went very still. What things, Piccolo? About the medicine. About the man with silver hair. Luca's voice dropped to barely a whisper. About Elena. Ice flooded my veins. What about me? But Luca had already drifted back into fevered sleep, leaving his words hanging like a prophecy in the antiseptic air. His father stared at me for a long moment, something calculating and dangerous, shifting behind his eyes. It seems, he said slowly, we need to have a different conversation. That's when I noticed my full name on his phone. Screen, not just Elena. Elena Grace Mitchell. My address, my schedule, my entire life laid out in neat digital rows. I'd been watched. I'd been chosen, and I had no idea why. You've been watching me. The words came out steadier than I felt, my free hand gripping the bed rail while Luca's fevered fingers still clutched the other. For how long? 3 weeks. He said it without apology, without shame, just fact. Since you treated Maya Chen the first time. 3 weeks. I thought back ordinary shifts, coffee runs, grocery shopping at midnight after long days. All of it observed, catalogued, assessed. My skin crawled with retroactive vulnerability. That's illegal. So is murder. He pulled a chair close, sat down with predatory grace. This close, I could see exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes. Someone in this hospital wants my son dead. You're the only person who's touched him without consequence. Without consequence? The last nurse who tried to examine him ended up in the ER herself. Allergic reaction to something she'd never been allergic to before. His jaw tightened. The one before that had a car accident. Brake lines cut. My mouth went dry. You think someone's what? Cursing people who get close to Luca? I think someone's eliminating variables. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Everyone who's tried to help him gets hurt, except you. Maybe I just haven't been hurt yet. Something flickered across his face. Concern? Fear? It was gone before I could name it. Maybe. Or maybe you're exactly what you appear to be. Safe. I don't even know your name. Dante Torresi. He watched my face for recognition. When none came, he seemed to relax fractionally. You really don't know who I am. Should I? Most of the city knows my name. Or fears it. I thought about the men in the hallway, the cameras, the casual mention of police captains and FBI agents on his payroll. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. You're organized crime. I'm a businessman with varied interests. His smile held no warmth. Some of them happened to operate in gray areas. Gray areas. I looked at Luca, innocent in sleep despite the fever painting his cheeks red. Is that what got his mother killed? Gray areas? Dante's face went rigid. Lucia knew who I was when she married me. She understood the risks. Did she understand her 6-year-old son would pay for them? The chair scraped as he stood abruptly, and for a moment I thought I'd gone too far. His hands clenched and unclenched, the tendons in his neck standing out like cables under strain. But when he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost broken. She was supposed to be safe. The house was a fortress, guards everywhere. She wasn't even the target I was, but they knew. He stopped, composed himself. They knew the only way to destroy me was through her. Through him. The rawness in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the controlled predator from the doorway. This was a man bleeding from wounds that wouldn't close. Who's they? If I knew that, would my son be dying in a public hospital bed? Luca stirred, whimpering. His temperature was climbing again. I could feel it through his skin. I reached for the call button, but Dante caught my wrist. His grip was firm but not painful, his palm calloused in ways that spoke of violence. "Please," he said, and the word seemed to cost him. "No more doctors. They make him worse. He needs medication. Every medication they've given him has triggered a reaction, different each time, like his body's been programmed to reject help." His hand was still on my wrist, and I could feel his pulse racing beneath that controlled exterior. "But you held his hand for 3 hours and nothing happened. His fever actually went down. That's coincidence, is it?" He released me, pulled something from his pocket. A photograph, worn at the edges. This was taken the day before Lucia died. The woman in the picture was stunning olive skin, dark eyes, a smile that seemed to hold secrets. She stood in what looked like an aviary, surrounded by yellow canaries, her hand extended with seeds. But what made my breath catch was the pin on her dress. A cardinal, exactly like mine. "Where did you get that pin?" Dante asked softly. "My grandmother. I stopped, memory flooding back. She was a nurse too, worked at Street Mary's downtown before it closed. Lucia's mother was a patient at Street Mary's, 20 years ago." He took the photo back, handled it like spun glass. "Terminal cancer. She lived 6 months longer than anyone expected. The nurses said it was a miracle." "You think what? That my grandmother treated your mother-in-law?" "I think there are patterns in this world we don't understand." He moved back to Luca's bedside, brushed a hand over his son's hair. "I think sometimes people are connected in ways that transcend coincidence." Luca's eyes fluttered open, focused on his father with difficulty. "Papa? I'm here, Piccolo. The birds are louder." His gaze shifted to me, pupils dilated with fever. "She makes them quiet. Can she stay?" Dante looked at me, and for the first time, I saw him without any masks. Just a father watching his son slip away, desperate enough to believe in connections he couldn't explain. "That's up to her," he said quietly. "I should have left. Should have called security, reported everything, gotten as far away from this family and their dangerous world as possible." But Luca's hand in mine felt like an anchor, and something in my chest, intuition, destiny, stupidity, whispered that I was exactly where I needed to be. "My shift ends at 7, I heard myself say. "I can stay until then." Relief flickered across Dante's features before the mask slammed back down. But as he settled back in his chair, I caught him pulling out his phone again. Not to watch the cameras this time, but to send a message I couldn't read. 3 minutes later, Doctor. Morrison appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Elena? You're being reassigned. Just to room 314. Administrator's orders." I looked at Dante, who met my gaze steadily. "What did you do?" "I made sure you can stay," he said simply. "Officially." That's when I understood. I wasn't just being watched anymore. I was being claimed. And somewhere in the hospital, someone was watching us both, waiting for their next move. By dawn, the hospital felt different. The usual morning shift chaos seemed muted, like someone had thrown a blanket over the entire pediatric ward. I noticed things I shouldn't, how certain nurses avoided eye contact, how Dr. Morrison's hands shook when he signed charts, how the security cameras seemed to follow my movement with unusual precision. Luca's fever had stabilized at 100.2. He slept fitfully, still clutching my cardinal pin, while Dante made quiet phone calls in Italian. I caught fragments, something about shipments, something about territory, something about a silver-haired man that made his voice drop to dangerous depths. "You should eat," he said, suddenly ending his call. "You've been here 7 hours." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." He stood, stretched in a way that revealed the gun holster beneath his jacket. "Your hands are trembling, and you've checked that same IV line 4 times. He was right. Exhaustion was making me sloppy. And in my world, in any world, sloppy meant dangerous. "Marco will get you food," he said, and one of the suited men appeared in the doorway like he'd been summoned by thought alone. "The cafeteria's closed. But the kitchen staff are accommodating." "You mean paid off?" "I mean accommodating." His smile was sharp. "There's a difference." Marco returned with coffee that was too good for hospital brew. and a breakfast sandwich that was definitely not from the regular menu. I ate mechanically, watching Luca's chest rise and fall, trying not to think about how my life had tilted off its axis in a single night. "You're not scared," Dante observed. "Most people would be running by now. I don't abandon sick children, even when their father is what I am." I met his gaze directly. "What exactly are you, Dante?" Before he could answer, Luca jolted awake with a scream that sent ice through my veins. His eyes were wide, unseeing, focused on something that wasn't there. "The Silver Man," he gasped. "He's here. He's in the walls." Dante moved faster than I'd have thought possible, scooping Luca into his arms. "Where, Piccolo? Show me where." Luca pointed at the air vent near the ceiling, his whole body shaking. He whispers through the metal. "Says Elena knows. Says she has to remember." "Remember what?" I stood, my heart hammering. The prayer. Nana's prayer. The one that makes the birds sing right. My blood turned to ice. There was only one prayer my grandmother used to whisper over terminal patients, one I'd never heard anyone else say. It was in Italian, despite her Irish roots, something she'd learned from an old woman at St. Mary's. "How do you—" I started, but Dante cut me off with a raised hand. He was staring at the vent, and I followed his gaze. Was it my imagination, or was there something gleaming in the darkness behind the grate? "Marco," he said quietly. "Clear the floor. Boss. Now." Marco disappeared. Within minutes, I heard doors closing, voices protesting, then silence. The entire pediatric ward had been evacuated except for our room. "What's happening?" I whispered. "Someone's been listening." Dante set Luca down gently, pulled out his phone. The camera feeds showed empty hallways, too empty. Even the nurses' station was abandoned. "They've been using the ventilation system." A soft laugh echoed through the vent, metallic and distorted. "Finally figured it out, Teresi?" The voice was cultured, amused. "Though I'm disappointed. I expected better from the great Shadow King of the city." Dante's hand went to his gun. "Salvatore." "Uncle Sal?" Luca whimpered. "But he brought me presents. He said he loved me." "Oh, I do love you, little one," the voice continued. "Just as I loved your mother. Such a shame she couldn't appreciate the artistry of a slow death. Though I must admit, you're proving more resilient than expected." My mind raced. Salvatore Dante's brother? Business partner? Either way, someone close enough to have access, to know details, to hurt where it counted most. The nurse is an unexpected variable. Salvatore continued. "Elena Mitchell, granddaughter of Rose Mitchell, who had quite the reputation at St. Mary's. They called her the Angel of Last Rites, didn't they? Strange how she always knew which patients would die, which would live." "What do you want?" Dante's voice was deadly quiet. "What I've always wanted. Everything you took from me. The territory, the connections, the respect. But first, I want you to watch your son die, just as I watched my daughter die because of your wars." "Sophia overdosed," Dante snarled. "That wasn't— she was trying to escape, trying to numb the pain of living in this family." The voice rose, lost its cultured tone. "But you wouldn't know about that. Perfect Dante with his perfect wife and perfect son." Luca pressed against me, burning with fever again. "Make him stop," he whispered. "The bad birds are coming." I pulled him closer, felt his racing heartbeat against my ribs. "What bad birds, sweetheart?" "The ones that carry the poison. They're in the air. Can't you smell it?" I couldn't smell anything, but Dante suddenly went rigid. "Gas," he breathed. "He's using the vents." A sweet chemical smell began to fill the room. My training kicked in airborne toxin, possibly aerosolized. We had seconds, maybe less. "Bathroom," I gasped, pulling Luca toward the small attached facility. "Seal the door. Wet towels." Dante followed, slamming the door behind us. We shoved wet towels under the gap, but I could already feel the lightheadedness starting. Luca was coughing, his small body convulsing. "There's another way," I said, remembering the hospital's layout. "The old laundry chute. It goes directly to the basement." Dante kicked the painted-over panel. It gave way, revealing a narrow metal chute. "You first. Catch him." "I can't leave." "You can and you will." He lifted Luca, whose eyes were rolling back. "Save my son, Elena. Please." The plea broke something in me. I positioned myself in the chute, the metal cold against my palms. "Send him down." As Luca's unconscious weight hit my arms, I heard Salvatore's laugh through the vent. You can run, brother, but the birds are everywhere, and they all sing for me now. Then I was sliding into darkness, Luca clutched against my chest, Dante somewhere above us, falling into whatever trap awaited below. The basement laundry room smelled of industrial detergent and mold. I landed hard on a canvas cart full of sheets, Luca's weight knocking the breath from my lungs. Above us, the chute rattled as Dante descended, his larger frame barely fitting through the narrow channel. He dropped beside us with controlled precision, immediately checking Luca's pulse. He's not breathing right. I pressed my ear to Luca's chest. His lungs sounded wet, congested. Whatever gas Salvatore had pumped through those vents was still working its way through his system. We need oxygen. The emergency supply room is. No hospitals. No doctors. Dante lifted his son, cradled him against his chest. They're all compromised. Then where? I have a place. Safe house. He was already moving toward the loading dock. Can you stabilize him for 20 minutes? 20 minutes without proper equipment, with a child whose body was already fighting multiple toxins. I need supplies. Basic things: oxygen, epinephrine, activated charcoal. Marco's already getting them. He kicked open the dock door, revealing a black SUV idling in the pre-dawn darkness. He knew to prepare the moment Salvatore revealed himself. The drive blurred past in fragments empty streets, Dante's hands white-knuckled on the wheel, me in the back holding Luca upright to help him breathe. His fever had spiked again, and he mumbled constantly in Italian, occasionally crying out for his mother. She used to sing to him, Dante said suddenly, catching my eye in the rearview mirror. When he had nightmares, some old lullaby her grandmother taught her. Ninna Nana, Ninna O. I found myself whispering. My grandmother's song, the one she'd learned at Street Mary's. Luca's breathing eased slightly. Dante's eyes sharpened. How do you know that? I told you. My grandmother. Your grandmother worked at Street Mary's 20 years ago. Lucia's mother died 18 years ago. His voice was deadly quiet. So how did Rose Mitchell learn a lullaby that's been in the Benedetti family for 6 generations? I didn't have an answer. The song had always been there in my memory. Something Grandma Rose hummed while making breakfast, sang during storms. She'd never told me where she'd learned it. The safe house was a brownstone tucked between abandoned warehouses, invisible unless you knew to look. Dante carried Luca inside while I followed, my mind cataloging exits, windows, potential weapons. When had I started thinking like this? The interior was sparse but expensive. Leather furniture, bulletproof glass, a medical setup that rivaled some emergency rooms. Marco had been thorough. Here. Dante laid Luca on a bed that looked like it had been prepared for exactly this scenario. Plastic sheeting, IV stands, monitors. Whatever you need. I worked on autopilot, setting up oxygen, starting an IV, pushing medications I hoped would counteract whatever cocktail of poisons was destroying Luca's system. Dante stood guard by the window, phone constantly buzzing with messages he ignored. Your brother, I said as I adjusted Luca's oxygen flow. How long has he been planning this? Salvatore isn't my brother. He's my cousin, raised together after his parents died, but he turned, and in the gray morning light, I could see the toll this was taking. I should have known. He was there when Lucia got sick, insisted on bringing his personal doctor. The one who poisoned her? The one who killed her slowly while I watched, thinking I was helping. His laugh was bitter. Do you know what it's like? Watching someone you love deteriorate, doing everything right, following every treatment, and still losing? I thought about my grandmother's final days, the way cancer had eaten her from the inside while I held her hand and pretended not to see death waiting in the corner. Yes. Something in my voice made him really look at me for the first time since we'd fled the hospital. You've lost someone. Everyone's lost someone. Not like this. He moved closer, and I could smell gunpowder again, mixed with expensive cologne and fear sweat. Not with the weight of knowing you could have prevented it if you'd just been smarter, faster, more ruthless. You couldn't have known. I should have known. The words exploded from him. It's my job to know, to see threats before they materialize, to protect what's mine. And I failed. Lucia paid the price. Now Luca. His voice broke. This man who commanded armies, who made police captains tremble, who lived in shadows and dealt in death, he broke in front of me. I reached out without thinking, caught his hand. His skin was hot, pulse racing beneath my fingers. He's not gone. We won't let him go. He stared at our joined hands like he couldn't quite process the contact. You don't even know us. You could walk away. No, I said quietly. I couldn't. Because you're a nurse? Because of some medical oath? Because... I stopped, unsure how to explain the pull I felt. The way Luca's hand in mine felt like coming home. The way Dante's grief echoed something deep in my chest. The way my grandmother's song seemed to know their family's pain. The birds, Luca whispered suddenly, his eyes snapping open. They're here. We both turned to the window. Dawn was breaking properly now, painting the sky pink and gold. And on every surface, the fire escape, the power lines, the abandoned warehouse roof were birds. Hundreds of them, all black except for one. A cardinal, red as blood, perched directly on the windowsill. It pecked at the glass 3 times, a sound that seemed to echo in my bones. Then it sang 4 notes that made my grandmother's voice echo in my memory. When the red bird sings, I whispered, remembering something Rose had said in her final delirium. The old debts come due. Dante's hand tightened on mine. What did you say? But before I could answer, Luca sat up, his fever breaking in a sudden rush of sweat. His eyes were clear for the first time in hours. Papa, he said clearly. She's the one Mama told me about. The one who would come when the birds went quiet. The one who knows the prayer that ends the curse. What curse? Dante demanded. Luca looked at me with eyes too old for his years. The one that started at Street Mary's. The one Nonna tried to break. The one that kills everyone who loves us. The cardinal pecked again, and this time, the glass cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but enough to let something in. The crack in the window spread like veins, forming a pattern that looked almost deliberate. The cardinal tilted its head, studying us through one black eye, then flew away. The moment it left, all the other birds dispersed in a rush of wings that sounded like whispered warnings. Tell me about the curse, Dante said, his voice low and controlled. But I could feel the tension radiating from him. Luca pulled his knees to his chest, looking smaller than his 6 years. Mama said it wasn't really a curse. She said it was a promise that went wrong. What kind of promise? The kind that binds families together. Luca's eyes found mine. Your grandma made it, didn't she? With Nonna Benedetti? My mouth went dry. I don't know what you're talking about. Liar. Dante stepped closer, not threatening but intense. Your hands are shaking. You recognize something. He was right. Deep in my memory, something was stirring my grandmother in her final days, gripping my hand, mumbling about debts and birds and promises that couldn't be broken. I'd thought it was the morphine talking. She said something before she died, I admitted. About a woman at Street Mary's. They made a pact of some kind, to protect each other's families. But Rose, my grandmother, she said she failed. Said the other woman's daughter died because of it. Lucia's mother. Dante's jaw clenched. She died of cancer at Street Mary's. No, Luca said quietly. Nonna was murdered. Mama told me the truth before she died. Someone poisoned Nonna to get to our family, and your grandma couldn't stop it. That's when the birds started coming. The room felt suddenly cold. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to process what sounded like madness but felt like truth. The birds? Death omens, Dante said flatly. Old Italian superstition. Blackbirds for enemies, but when they gather in hundreds. He trailed off, staring at the cracked window. Salvatore knows about this. He's using it somehow. He was there, Luca whispered. When Nonna died. He was young, but he was there. He heard her last words. What did she say? Luca closed his eyes, reciting like he'd memorized it. Until the debt is paid. Until the bloodlines merge. Until the cardinal sings the old song, True, we are bound to die for love. Silence settled over us, heavy as a funeral shroud. Outside, the city was waking up, oblivious to the strange web we were caught in. Bloodlines merge, Dante repeated slowly, his eyes finding mine. The weight of his gaze made my skin heat, made me too aware of how close he was standing. That's insane, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Is it? He reached out, fingers ghosting over my cheek where a strand of hair had escaped my ponytail. You walked into my son's room and he reached for you. Your grandmother's song calms him. You know things you shouldn't know. That doesn't mean... When I saw you on those cameras with Maya, he continued, his thumb tracing my jawline. I couldn't look away. 3 weeks, Elena. 3 weeks of watching you, telling myself it was about Luca's safety, but... Dante. His name came out breathless. You feel it too. It wasn't a question. His hand cupped my face fully now, tilting it up toward his. This pull, like gravity. I should have stepped back, should have remembered he was dangerous, that his world was violence and shadow. But Luca was watching us with something like hope in his eyes, and my grandmother's voice seemed to whisper in the air between us. The cardinal, I breathed. It's been following me for weeks, since Lucia died. His other hand found my waist, pulled me incrementally closer. It appeared the day of her funeral. The space between us collapsed. His lips brushed mine, barely a touch, but it felt like lightning through my veins, like recognition, like coming home. Luca made a soft sound, and we broke apart. His fever was gone entirely now, color returning to his cheeks. The birds are quiet, he said wonderingly. For the first time since Mama died, they're quiet. Dante's phone buzzed insistently. He ignored it, but it kept going. Finally, with a curse, he answered. The color drained from his face as he listened. What is it? I asked. He ended the call, already moving. Salvatore has Maya Chen, and her family. He says he'll release them if you come to him. Me? Why? Because he knows. Dante grabbed weapons from a hidden panel in the wall, his movements efficient and lethal. About the promise, the curse, whatever this is. He knows you're the key to breaking it. Or he's using me to hurt you. Yes. He checked his gun, slipped knives, into various holsters. But we don't have a choice. Maya is 6 years old. Her only crime was being born into a family that works for me. I thought about Maya's trusting eyes, her small hand in mine during treatments. Where does he want to meet? Street. Mary's. His laugh was bitter. Where else? The abandoned hospital where it all started. That place has been closed for 5 years. But Salvatore owns it now. He's been renovating it, turning it into something else. He moved to Luca, kissed his forehead. Marco will keep you safe, Piccolo. No! Luca grabbed his father's hand, then mine. You have to go together. The curse Mama said it can only be broken if... He stopped, tears rolling down his cheeks. If someone chooses love over blood. If someone sacrifices for a stranger's child. I looked at Dante, saw my own recognition mirrored in his eyes. I wasn't a stranger anymore, and this choice, this insane, dangerous choice, felt like the only one that mattered. I'll go, I said. Elena, together. I squeezed Luca's hand once more, then faced his father. We go together, or not at all. Dante studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Together, then. As we prepared to leave, the cracked window suddenly shattered completely, letting in the morning air. On the fire escape, the cardinal had returned. This time, it wasn't alone. A black bird perched beside it, a raven, larger and darker than seemed natural. They sat in perfect balance, red and black, watching us with eyes that seemed far too knowing. Then both took flight, heading toward Street Mary's. Toward whatever ending awaited us there. Street Mary's hospital loomed against the gray morning sky like a tombstone. 5 years of abandonment had turned its once white walls to mottled gray, windows staring blindly at the street below. But lights flickered in the upper floors, Salvatore's renovations, whatever twisted purpose they served. 3rd floor was pediatric oncology, I said quietly as Dante parked the SUV. Where my grandmother worked, where your mother-in-law died, where it all started. He checked his weapons one final time, then looked at me. You can still walk away. No, I can't. The pull toward this place, toward whatever resolution awaited, was undeniable now. You know I can't. His hand found mine across the console, fingers interlacing. If something happens, it won't. Elena. His voice dropped to that dangerous whisper I was beginning to recognize as barely controlled fear. If something happens to you because of my world, my choices. I silenced him by pressing my fingers to his lips. Your world became mine the moment Luca reached for my hand. Maybe before that. Maybe it was always going to be this way. He caught my wrist, pressed a kiss to my palm that sent heat spiraling through me. When this is over, I agreed, not letting him finish. Some promises were too dangerous to speak aloud before walking into a trap. The hospital's main entrance stood open, doors hanging off their hinges like broken wings. Our footsteps echoed in the empty lobby, stirring dust and memories. The reception desk where I'd volunteered as a teenager still stood, covered now in bird droppings and decay. Touching, isn't it? Salvatore's voice drifted from the old PA system, crackling with static. The place where angels of mercy became angels of death. Your grandmother killed 13 patients here, Elena. Did you know that? That's a lie. But my voice wavered. Rose had always been cagey about her final year at St. Mary's, about why she'd left nursing so abruptly. Is it? Ask yourself why a healthy woman in her 40s suddenly quit. Why she never spoke of this place. Why she taught you that lullaby, a song of protection that became a summons for death. Dante's hand tightened on his gun. Where are the Chens? 3rd floor, of course. The circle closes where it began. Come up, but only you two. Your men stay outside. Or the little girl learns what her uncle's intestines look like. We climbed the stairs in silence, past graffiti and shattered windows, past rooms where hope had once lived and died. The 3rd floor was different, cleaned, restored, almost pristine. The fluorescent lights hummed with new electricity, and the smell of fresh paint couldn't quite mask something medicinal underneath. The pediatric ward doors stood open, revealing a scene from a nightmare. The Chen family, Maya, her parents. Her uncle sat tied to hospital beds, IVs in their arms connected to bags of clear fluid. Salvatore stood between them, silver-haired and elegant in a way that made his cruelty more terrifying. He held a syringe filled with something dark. "Welcome home," he said to me. "Though I suppose it's more my home now. I've spent 3 years preparing this place, you know. Learning its secrets. Your grandmother left quite detailed notes." "Let them go," Dante said. "This is between us." "No, cousin. This has never been between us. It's been about them," he gestured to me. "The Mitchell women. The ones who promised to protect but brought only death." "What are you talking about?" Salvatore pulled out a leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. "Rose Mitchell's confession. Shall I read it? Or would you prefer to know how she murdered my mother?" The world tilted. "Your mother?" Benedetti was her maiden name. She married my father, Romano Teresi, Dante's uncle. But she was dying of cancer, just like Lucia's mother. They were best friends, you see. Shared a room here, made their little pact. His smile was sharp as glass. Rose was supposed to save them both. Instead, she poisoned them. "That's not... here." He threw the journal at my feet. "Read it yourself. How she discovered the treatment was killing them faster. How she tried to stop it but gave the wrong dosage. How 13 patients died in one night because she confused the medications." I picked up the journal with trembling hands, recognized my grandmother's handwriting immediately. The pages were filled with anguish, with medical notes, with a growing horror as she realized what she'd done. "It was an accident," I whispered. "Accident?" Salvatore's voice rose. "My mother died screaming, begging for the pain to stop. Lucia's mother lasted 3 more hours, long enough to curse both bloodlines with her dying breath. The promise," Dante said quietly. "It wasn't protection. It was punishment. Until the bloodlines merge," Salvatore confirmed. "Until someone chooses to die for the other's child. That's the only way to break it. So you see, Elena, you have a choice." He raised the syringe. "Take this poison, the same one your grandmother gave my mother, or watch the Chen family die. Slowly, while little Maya asks why the nice nurse won't help her." "No." Dante moved to block me, but I caught his arm. "He's right," I said quietly. "This is my family's debt, Elena. Maya doesn't deserve this. None of them do." I looked at the little girl, so small and frightened, then at Dante. "And Luca doesn't deserve to grow up under a curse. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Salvatore's smile widened. "Rose Mitchell's bloodline owes a death, payment in full, or the curse continues. Every woman you love will die, Dante. Every child will suffer. Unless..." I stepped forward. "Unless I take the poison." "Elena, no." Dante caught me, pulled me against him. "I won't let you. It's not your choice." I turned in his arms, memorized his face. "Take care of Luca. Tell him the birds will sing properly now. I can't lose you." His voice broke. "Not when I just found you." I kissed him then, pouring everything I couldn't say into that contact. He tasted like gunpowder and regret, like violent endings and impossible beginnings. When I pulled away, Salvatore was watching with something like satisfaction. How touching, the nurse and the monster. Rose and Benedetti would be proud. I walked toward him, toward the syringe, toward an ending I should have seen coming. But as my fingers closed around the poison, a child's voice echoed through the hospital. "Papa! Elena!" Luca stood in the doorway, Marco behind him looking panicked. The boy's eyes were clear, focused, and absolutely unafraid. You forgot something, he said clearly. Mama's last message, the one she made me memorize. Then he began to speak in rapid Italian, words that made Salvatore go white as paper. Words that changed everything. Salvatore Teresi is not a Benedetti son, Luca recited, his young voice cutting through the hospital's silence. He carries no blood from the cursed line. Mama found the records. The real Salvatore died at 3 months old. This man is Antonio Rossi, who took a dead child's name to claim a fortune. The syringe slipped from Salvatore's fingers, shattering on the floor. You lying little. Mama knew, Luca continued, stepping closer despite Dante's sharp gesture to stay back. She spent 3 years searching birth records, DNA tests, genealogy. You're nobody, just a man who wanted what wasn't yours. Shut up! Salvatore pulled a gun, aimed it at Luca. Everything happened in fragments, Dante moving faster than thought, shoving Luca behind him, the gun swinging toward me instead. The crack of gunfire not from Salvatore's weapon, but from somewhere behind us. Marco stood in the doorway, smoking pistol steady, as Salvatore crumpled to his knees. Blood spread across his expensive shirt, but he was laughing. You think this changes anything? He coughed, red speckling his lips. The curse doesn't care about bloodlines anymore. It's evolved. Fed on 20 years of death and grief, it just needs payment. He lunged for the fallen syringe with his good hand. I moved without thinking, kicking it away, but his fingers closed on my ankle instead. His grip was desperate, dying, but strong enough to pull me down. If I can't have satisfaction, he gasped, then I'll have chaos. Another gun appeared in his hand, small, hidden, already firing. Not at me, but at the IV bags connected to the Chen family. They exploded in sequence, whatever poison they contained mixing with saline, flowing faster into innocent veins. No! I scrambled toward Maya, tried to clamp off her IV, but Salvatore's weight dragged me back. Dante's foot connected with Salvatore's head, ending his grip and his consciousness in one brutal motion. But the damage was done, the Chens were convulsing, Maya's small body seizing against the restraints. Cut them loose! I shouted, and Marco was already there, knife flashing through bonds. I reached Maya first, pulled the IV out, checked her pupils. She needs activated charcoal. Now, there's a pharmacy on the first floor. It's been cleared out, Dante said. Then we improvise. I grabbed the emergency kit from the wall, dusty but intact. Ipecac syrup. Make her vomit before more absorbs. My hands moved on muscle memory, grandmother's training taking over. Induce vomiting, monitor airways, check vitals. Maya's parents were conscious enough to help, their exposure less severe. But her uncle, he's not breathing, Marco reported. I left Maya with Dante and rushed to the uncle, started chest compressions. Come on, come on. The rhythm was automatic, 30 compressions, 2 breaths. But his color was gray, pupils fixed. Too much poison. Too fast. Elena. Dante's voice was gentle. He's gone. No, I can, but I couldn't. The uncle's eyes stared at nothing. Another death in this cursed place. A sound escaped me, frustration, grief, rage at the senselessness of it all. Dante pulled me against him, his strength the only thing keeping me upright. You saved the others, he murmured against my hair. Maya's alive because of you. Papa. Luca stood apart from us, tears streaming down his face. Did I do wrong? Telling the truth? No, Piccolo. Dante extended an arm, pulled his son into our embrace. Truth is never wrong, even when it brings pain. Mama said secrets were poison, Luca whispered. She said they killed from inside. Salvatore groaned from the floor, semi-conscious but alive. Marco stood over him, gun ready, waiting for Dante's word. Don't, I said quietly. Don't become what he wanted you to be. Dante's jaw clenched. He tried to kill my son. Your family. He is dying anyway. I could see it in the way Salvatore breathed, internal bleeding, maybe a nicked artery. Let the police have him. Let him face justice. My justice is faster. Your justice teaches Luca that violence is the only answer. I turned in his arms, met his eyes. Break the pattern. Choose different. Something shifted in his expression. A war between the man he'd been and the man he could become. Finally, he nodded to Marco. Call it in. Anonymous tip. We were never here. As Marco made the call, I knelt beside Maya, checking her vitals again. Stable, though she'd need a hospital, a real one. The curse, Luca said suddenly. It's still there. I can feel it. He was right. The air felt heavy, charged with something that made my skin crawl. The broken windows seemed to breathe, and shadows moved in ways shadows shouldn't. Because it was never about Salvatore, I said, understanding flooding through me. He was using the curse, but he didn't create it. It's about the original promise, the debt, which can only be paid with willing sacrifice. Dante's arms tightened around me. I won't let you, not death. I pulled away, moved to where my grandmother's journal had fallen. Look, I showed him a page near the end, Rose's handwriting shaky with age. She figured it out, before she died. The curse doesn't want death. It wants what was promised but never given. Which is, I read aloud. Maria Benedetti asked me to raise her daughter if she died, to love her as my own. I promised, but when she passed, I was too afraid, too guilty. I let the family take Lucia, never visited, never kept my word. Love, Luca breathed. The curse wants the love that was promised. A wind rose from nowhere, swirling through the hospital. Papers flew, dust devils danced, and every shadow seemed to lean toward us, waiting. Then we give it what it wants, I said, reaching for Luca's hand. I choose to love this child, to protect him as my own, to keep the promise my grandmother broke. The moment the words left my mouth, the building shook. Plaster rained from the ceiling, and a sound like 1,000 birds taking flight filled the air. Then, sudden silence. The oppressive weight vanished. The shadows returned to normal. Even the air seemed cleaner, lighter. It's gone, Luca whispered wonderingly. The dark feeling is gone. But as we gathered the Chen family, prepared to leave this place of death and memory, I saw something that made my blood freeze, written in dust on the window, visible only as the morning sun hit it. One curse broken, one curse born. The watchers remember. Below, it, a handprint too large to be human. We'd ended one evil, but we'd awakened something else. We didn't speak during the drive back to the safe house. Maya slept in her mother's arms while her father held his brother's body, preparing for a burial that would have to wait. Luca sat between Dante and me, his small hand gripping mine like an anchor. The morning sun painted everything gold, but I couldn't shake the image of that handprint. Too large, too wrong. The watchers remember. What watchers? What had we awakened? You're shaking, Dante murmured, his hand finding my knee. I killed someone tonight. The words came out hollow. Not directly, but if I'd been faster with the uncle, if I'd... Stop. His fingers tightened. Salvatore killed him. Not you. I chose to save Maya first. You chose to save a child. Any parent here would thank you for that choice. The safe house felt different when we arrived. Safer, somehow, like the broken curse had lifted more than just supernatural weight. Marco took the Chens to a secure medical facility, one Dante guaranteed was beyond any corruption, which left us alone, Dante, Luca, and me, in a house that suddenly felt too quiet. You should rest, Dante said, but his eyes said something else entirely. I'm not tired. I wasn't. Adrenaline still coursed through me, making everything feel sharp, immediate. Luca needs... I'm okay. Luca interrupted, yawning. The birds are quiet. They're all quiet now. He looked between us with two knowing eyes. You need to talk. About the promise. About what happens now. Dante carried him to bed, and I followed, watching as he tucked his son in with a tenderness that made my chest ache. Luca caught my hand before I could leave. You meant it, right? He whispered. About choosing to love me? Every word. Good. Because I choose you too. For Papa. For me. His eyes fluttered closed. Mama would have liked you. I waited until his breathing deepened before leaving, finding Dante standing by the window in the main room, shoulder rigid with tension. We need to discuss what happens now, he said without turning. Do we? You made a promise in that hospital. A supernatural vow to protect my son. That's not something you can just... I know what I promised. I moved closer, close enough to see his reflection in the glass. I meant it. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. My world is violent, dangerous, morally complicated. I touched his shoulder, felt him tense. I watched you choose mercy over vengeance tonight. I saw you put Luca's well-being above your own rage. That's the man I made my promise to. He turned then, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole my breath. Elena, I know who you are, I continued. What you are. I should run. Every rational part of me says to run. But he kissed me. Not the desperate brush of lips from before, but something deeper, hungrier. His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones as his mouth claimed, mine with 20 years of loneliness and 3 weeks of want. I melted against him, fingers tangling in his hair, tasting espresso and danger and home. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "This is insane," he whispered. "Completely. You could have a normal life. Safe. Clean. I could." I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But normal never felt right. Even before you, before Luca, I was searching for something. Maybe it was this. Maybe my grandmother's guilt drove me to nursing, to this hospital, to that exact shift when your son needed someone. Fate, he said, half mocking, half wondering. Or coincidence, or curse. Does it matter? I traced the scar through his eyebrow. "I'm here. I choose to be here. The Watchers," he said quietly. "That message, we don't know what it means. Then we figure it out. Together. I can't lose you." The words seemed torn from him. "Not when Luca finally has. Not when I finally have. You won't." I kissed him again, softer this time. "I'm surprisingly hard to kill. Ask Salvatore." He laughed, dark and appreciative. "That was magnificent, by the way. The way you fought. I had good motivation." I glanced toward Luca's room. The best motivation. His phone buzzed. Marco, reporting that Salvatore had died en route to the hospital. No one would investigate too closely a gang dispute, the police would say. Case closed. "It's over," I said. "This part." Dante pulled me against him, my back to his chest, arms wrapped around me like he could shield me from whatever came next. But the Watchers. A knock at the door interrupted him. Not Marco's pattern. Not anyone's pattern he recognized, judging by how quickly his hand went to his gun. "Stay with Luca," he ordered, but I followed anyway. Through the peephole, I saw something impossible. A woman stood there, elderly, wearing a nurse's uniform from another era. Her face was kind but translucent, like looking through water. "Rose?" I breathed. My grandmother smiled, lifted one ghostly hand to wave. Dante reached for the door, but I caught his wrist. "Wait." Rose's mouth moved, forming words we couldn't hear. Then she pointed to the window, where the cardinal had returned. But now it sat beside something else, a yellow canary, bright as sunshine. The two birds sang in harmony, a sound that made my bones ache with recognition. Then Rose was gone, vanished between one blink and the next, leaving only a small envelope on the doorstep. I opened the door, grabbed the envelope before Dante could stop me. Inside, my grandmother's handwriting, though she'd been dead for years. "The first curse is broken. The second has always existed. The Watchers aren't enemies, they're witnesses. The Teresi and Mitchell lines are bound now, not by death but by choice. Protect each other. The old families are stirring. The real war begins with sunrise. Love. Rose P. S. Tell the boy. His mother sends her love. We're taking care of her here." I looked at Dante, saw my own mix of fear and determination reflected in his eyes. "The real war?" I whispered. "The old families," he said grimly. "Crime dynasties that predate mine. If they know the curse is broken, if they think I'm vulnerable, then we face them together." He crushed me against him, kiss fierce with promise. Together. Outside, more birds began to gather, not black this time, cardinals and canaries, hundreds of them. An army of witnesses for whatever came next. Dawn arrived with violence. The first window shattered at 5:47 a.m., a smoke grenade rolling across the floor, then another, and another. The safe house filled with thick, choking gray as shadows moved beyond the walls too many to count. "Luca." I ran for his room, but Dante was already there, scooping his son into his arms. "Panic room," he ordered, pushing us toward what looked like a closet but opened into reinforced steel. "Both of you. Now. Not without you." Gunfire erupted, automatic weapons turning the walls into Swiss cheese. Dante shoved us into the panic room, but I caught the door before he could close it. "Together," I said fiercely. "We do this together." Or, Elena. His kiss was desperate, final. "Protect him. That's your promise. Keep it." The door slammed shut. locks engaging with mechanical finality. Through the small monitor, I watched Dante emerge from smoke like an avenging angel, gun in each hand, moving with lethal precision. "Papa!" Luca struggled in my arms. "He'll be okay," I lied, watching Dante take down 3 men before diving behind the overturned couch. "Your father knows what he's doing," but there were too many. Black-clad figures poured through windows, doors, even the skylights. Not random thugs, these moved like military, coordinated, professional. The old families. I breathed. They came together. Through the smoke, I saw Marco arrive with reinforcements, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Dante fought like a man possessed, but even he couldn't be everywhere at once. "We have to help," Luca said, his young voice steady. "The birds told me." "What birds?" "Luca, we're in a metal box." He pressed his small hand against the wall and I heard it singing. Not outside but inside the walls themselves, like the building's bones were harmonizing. "Mama's here," he whispered. "And your grandma. And all of them, the ones who died for love." The monitor flickered, showing impossible things. Translucent figures moving through the smoke. Rose, young again, stepping between Dante and a sniper's bullet that passed through her harmlessly but threw off the shooter's aim. A woman who could only be Lucia, beautiful even as a ghost, whispering in Marco's ear right before he dodged a knife. "They're protecting them," I breathed. "No," Luca corrected. "They're buying time. For you to remember." "Remember what?" "The real promise. The one Grandma Rose couldn't keep." He looked at me with eyes too old for 6 years. "She was supposed to teach Nonna Benedetti the prayer. The one that doesn't break curses. The one that commands them." My mind raced. The lullaby. Not just a song, but something older, deeper. Rose had hummed it constantly in her final days, like she was trying to tell me something. "Nina Nana, Nina O," I began, and Luca joined me. But this time, more verses came, words I didn't know I knew, rising from some ancestral memory. The monitor went white. The gunfire stopped. When the image cleared, every attacker was on their knees, hands over their ears, blood trickling from some. Dante stood in the center of the room, untouched, staring at the panic room door with awe. I input the unlock code with shaking fingers. The door opened to devastation, furniture destroyed, walls riddled with holes, but our people standing. And kneeling before us, the heads of 3 crime families I recognized from news reports. "Impossible," one gasped. The voice of judgment. It was destroyed with street. "Mary's." "No," I said, understanding flooding through me. It was sleeping, waiting for someone who carried both bloodlines, the healer and the judged. I looked at Luca, realizing the truth. "Your mother, she had Benedetti blood, but also Romano blood," Dante finished. "Salvatore's father, Lucia's grandfather, the family that was cursed for their crimes." His eyes found mine. "And you carry Rose's gift, but also the blood of those she failed to save." I remembered now. Comments about my father's family, how they'd lost someone at Street Mary's. We're all connected, all part of the same tragic story. The eldest crime boss, Vincenzo Carlucci, raised his head. "The old laws state that the voice of judgment can offer mercy or death. We await your decision." I felt the power of it thrumming in my blood. One word from me, and these men would die. Their hearts would simply stop, as hearts had stopped at Street Mary's 20 years ago. "Elena," Dante said quietly. He didn't tell me what to choose. He trusted me to decide. I looked at Luca, thought about cycles of violence, about curses born from vengeance. "You want mercy? Earn it. The old wars end today. No more targeting families. No more using children as leverage. Break these rules, and the judgment will find you." "You can't enforce," Vincenzo began. I hummed 3 notes of the lullaby. He collapsed, gasping, clutching his chest. "I can," I said simply. "And I will." One by one they agreed. Blood oaths were sworn not to Dante but to the voice itself, to the power that transcended their petty wars. They left broken, humbled, forever changed. When the last one departed, I collapsed into Dante's arms, the power draining from me like water. "You could have killed them," he murmured against my hair. "Ended every threat to our family in one moment, and become the monster the curse wanted me to be?" I pulled back to look at him. "That's not the legacy I want for Luca." "Our son," Dante corrected, and my heart stopped. "If you'll have us, Both of us. Forever. Papa's asking wrong, Luca announced, producing a small box from his pajama pocket. Mama left this, said to give it to the lady who would save us. Inside was a ring, not massive or ostentatious, but perfect. A ruby cardinal surrounded by diamond canaries. Lucia had it made before she died, Dante said roughly. She said she dreamed about you, the woman with the healing voice who would love us both. I looked at them, this dangerous man and his extraordinary son, my unexpected family born from curses and choices. Yes, I said simply. Luca whooped, throwing his arms around us both. Outside, birds erupted in song, not omens of death but celebrations of life. The watchers approve. Luca giggled. I looked through the shattered window. The city was waking up, oblivious to the war that had just ended, the power that had awakened, the love that had conquered death itself. What now? I asked Dante. Now we rebuild. Differently. Better. He kissed me, soft and sure. Together. Together. I agreed. The cardinal and canary on the windowsill sang one last harmony, then flew away into the sunrise. The curse was broken. The watchers were satisfied. And our real story, messy, dangerous, but ours could finally begin. 6 months later, I stood in the rebuilt pediatric ward of St. Mary's Hospital, now the Lucia Teresi Memorial Children's Center. Luca played with Maya Chen in the sunlit playroom while Dante watched from the doorway, love softening his dangerous edges. I still wore my grandmother's cardinal pin. He still carried his gun. But now we also carried each other through the darkness, into the light, forever bound by choice rather than curse. The birds still sang. But now, they sang of hope.